As we grow older, there's one topic that often gets brushed under the rug: intimacy. Many people believe that sexual health and desire are only important in youth, but the truth is, intimacy after 60 is just as vital to a person's well-being. We live in a society that tends to hide aging behind the curtain of quiet dignity, but no one talks about the challenges we face, especially when it comes to intimacy and sexual health. Today, I want to share with you a topic that's often avoided: what happens to your sex life as you age, and more importantly, how you can navigate those changes with confidence. Let's begin with the story of Helen. Helen was 63 when she noticed something subtle but troubling in her life. For years, she had enjoyed a healthy sexual relationship with her husband, Frank. They'd been together for over 40 years. But one day something shifted. She started feeling a little more exhausted than usual. Her desire to be close to Frank was still there, but it seemed to fade as soon as they tried to be intimate. Helen felt guilty and embarrassed. She thought, is something wrong with me? She had read about hormonal changes in menopause, but she hadn't considered that her sexual health might be impacted as she aged. Helen's story isn't unique. Many people in their 60s and beyond find that their relationship with intimacy changes. It's not just about physical decline. It's about navigating new territory, facing the unknown, and adjusting to the body's new rhythm. Let's talk about 5 unexpected ways aging affects intimacy and how you can manage these changes with a healthier perspective. Let's start with the first challenge Helen faced: hormonal changes. Many people assume that menopause or andropause, the male equivalent, are the only times when hormones play a role in intimacy. But hormones change gradually throughout life, and this can affect libido, energy levels, and even your mental health. In both men and women, testosterone levels drop as they age. For women, this typically begins around menopause, which usually happens between 45 and 55 years old. As estrogen levels decline, many women experience vaginal dryness, decreased arousal, and changes in their libido. Men, on the other hand, often notice a gradual decrease in testosterone as they enter their 60s and beyond, which can affect erectile function, desire, and stamina. However, Helen found out the hard way that even though the changes were hormonal, they weren't necessarily permanent. She and Frank decided to take action. They spoke to their doctor, who recommended hormone replacement therapy, HRT, for Helen. It wasn't a quick fix, but over time, Helen felt her energy return, and she found that her desire for intimacy with Frank rekindled. The important thing is to seek medical advice and not let discomfort or frustration fester. As we age, our bodies change in ways that we don't always anticipate. You might find that your body doesn't function the way it used to. For men, erectile dysfunction, ED, becomes more common as they age. For women, vaginal dryness can make intercourse uncomfortable or even painful. Helen noticed that as she entered her 60s, sex didn't feel the same. What had once been spontaneous and effortless now felt more like a chore. She experienced discomfort and dryness, which was especially discouraging since she still felt emotionally connected to Frank. Helen's doctor suggested the use of lubricants and vaginal moisturizers to address the dryness. She also recommended pelvic floor exercises to help strengthen the muscles responsible for arousal and orgasm. But what about Frank? He didn't have erectile dysfunction, but he did notice that maintaining an erection was more difficult than it used to be. His doctor explained that this was common for men as they age, especially when combined with the psychological and emotional effects of aging, such as stress or depression. Frank and Helen weren't alone in this struggle. Many couples experience this shift in intimacy, but with patience, understanding, and the right guidance, it can be overcome. Now let's talk about the mental and emotional aspects of aging and intimacy. When you reach your 60s, the pressures and worries of life can affect your desire for intimacy. For some, physical changes might cause embarrassment or anxiety. For others, emotional stress or a deepening sense of loneliness may make it harder to connect emotionally or physically with a partner. Helen and Frank's relationship had been filled with love and joy, but as they grew older, they also found themselves grappling with the passing of friends, the loss of loved ones, and the worries that come with aging. Frank, in particular, struggled with feelings of inadequacy. He'd always been the one to initiate intimacy, but now he felt more like a passive participant, unsure of how to navigate their changing dynamic. This psychological shift is completely normal. According to experts, mental health plays a huge role in intimacy. Anxiety, depression, and self-esteem issues can all affect how people view themselves sexually. Helen and Frank worked through their emotional challenges together. They spent more time connecting emotionally before they tried to be physically intimate. Sometimes it wasn't about sex. It was about simply lying together, holding hands, and reminiscing about their life together. Intimacy isn't always about the act of sex. It's about closeness, trust, and vulnerability. A huge part of navigating intimacy after 60 is learning how to communicate openly with your partner about what's happening. Unfortunately, many people, especially in older generations, didn't grow up with open discussions about sexuality. They were taught that talking about sex was taboo, which often leads to misunderstandings and frustration later in life. Helen realized that her relationship with Frank needed a new kind of communication. Instead of pretending everything was fine, they decided to be honest with each other. They talked about their physical discomforts, their worries about their changing bodies, and the pressure they both felt. This open dialogue helped them reconnect in a way they hadn't before. They learned that by being honest about their feelings, they could both support each other through the changes. Sometimes the physical aspects of intimacy take a back seat to emotional connection. As we get older, we might not have the energy or desire for intercourse as we once did, but that doesn't mean that intimacy has to disappear. In fact, studies have shown that couples who maintain a physical affection, whether that's cuddling, kissing, or holding hands, experience greater emotional satisfaction in their relationships. Helen and Frank began focusing less on traditional ideas of intimacy and more on physical closeness. They made it a point to kiss each other more often, to hold hands when they went on walks, and to share tender moments of affection before bed. The results were profound. They found that the more they embraced emotional intimacy, the more their physical intimacy began to follow suit. Intimacy after 60 doesn't have to be defined by societal norms. What works for one couple might not work for another, and that's okay. The important thing is to stay connected emotionally and be willing to adapt to the changes your body and your relationship are going through. As Helen and Frank sat on their porch one cool spring evening, sipping tea and watching the sun melt behind the hills, they smiled quietly at one another. Not because everything had returned to how it once was, but because something deeper had blossomed between them. They had faced the fear of change, walked through discomfort together, and found a new rhythm, a softer, slower, yet more meaningful one. This is the quiet truth so many people don't speak about. Intimacy after 60 is not the ending of a romantic story. It's the beginning of a new chapter, one where emotional connection becomes richer, where touch becomes more intentional, and where love becomes less about urgency and more about presence. If you're listening to this now and feeling uncertain about your own journey, maybe you've experienced some of the same frustrations, doubts, or even shame that Helen once did. Know this: there is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are not too old. You are not alone. Aging changes your body, yes. It may change how you express desire, how you receive pleasure, how your body responds, but it does not erase your need for closeness. It does not take away your worth. It does not strip you of the right to feel loved, desired, or deeply connected. In fact, the beauty of intimacy after 60 lies in its authenticity. There's no pretense, no pressure to impress, You've lived, you've learned, and you've earned the right to approach intimacy on your own terms. This stage of life can be a time of rediscovery. For some, it may mean reconnecting with a longtime partner. For others, it might be opening up to new love after loss or loneliness. And for many, it's about reestablishing intimacy with oneself, relearning how to care for your body, listen to your needs, and explore new possibilities with curiosity, not shame. So what can you do now? Start with a conversation with your partner, your doctor, even with yourself. Acknowledge what's changing. Ask the questions you've been afraid to ask. Seek out professional help when needed, whether it's from a medical specialist, a therapist, or a support group. There's strength in asking for guidance. Then take one small step. Maybe it's trying a new way to be physically close that doesn't involve sex. Maybe it's reading a book about later life intimacy or sharing a story with a friend. Maybe it's simply deciding today that your age does not define your capacity to love or be loved. The truth is, sexual health is not just about sex. It's about connection, communication, comfort, and care. And all of that is still within your reach, no matter what the calendar says. As Helen once told her granddaughter, who had asked her, wide-eyed and innocent, if old people still kiss, she smiled and replied, "We don't just kiss, sweetheart. We remember, we savor, and when we do, it means even more." Aging isn't the end of intimacy. It's the invitation to experience it on a deeper level than ever before. So embrace your journey, whatever it looks like. Helen and Frank's story is just one example of how people can navigate intimacy after 60. Yes, things will change, and yes, there will be challenges along the way. But with patience, communication, and a willingness to adapt, intimacy after 60 can still be rich, fulfilling, and deeply meaningful. So if you're facing similar challenges, remember this: you're not alone. Aging affects us all in different ways, but it doesn't mean we have to let go of the parts of life that make us feel connected, loved, and alive. Embrace the changes. Talk openly with your partner, and above all, remember that intimacy isn't just about sex. It's about the deep connection you share with those you love.